Morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fife Property Show. This morning's topic is lettings trends for 2022 and a landlord's guide to the future demands of buy-to-let properties in Fife. This morning, we have joining us a buy-to-let investor and landlord for many years, Jim Parker. How are you this morning, Jim?
I'm excited. We're going to be talking about a market I'll absolutely love. Letting trends for 2022, the landlord's guide to demand for buy-to-lets in the Fife and throughout Scotland and throughout the United Kingdom and possibly even throughout the world, depending on where you want to put your portfolio.
Yeah, a really good topic. Great tips for potentially new investors and landlords and obviously current ones as well. To help us talk through things today, we've got Karen Marshall, who's our letting agent. Morning, Karen.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you this morning?
Good, thank you. Not as excited as Jim.
People very rarely are when it comes to...
When your future unfolds before you and you understand where you're going and how you're going to get there, you can't help but get excited about it.
Yeah. And I think this morning we're going to discuss what people's plans are for their buy-to-let business for the next year, whether they'll be buying their first rental property, whether they'll be upgrading their portfolio or expanding into new parts of the lettings market. Jim, you have, over the last year or so, expanded quite greatly with your portfolio. Obviously, we've been involved in that with you.
So. You think it's expansion quite greatly, but I think 17 properties is nothing.
I think maybe it's how quickly you've started to develop things.
I suppose that's it. You know, I've kind of, the sun and the planet and the moons have all aligned right at once, and this is the time to get involved in buy-to-let, definitely. Yeah. And the reason for that is because exponentially over the next 10 to 20 years, property prices over the last 10 to 20 years has gone up 200% odd. Yeah. I mean, imagine that. Imagine if you bought a property portfolio or one property right now, and it went up 200% in the next 20 years. Would you need a pension? Possibly not.
No. I think it's important, obviously, if you're expanding your portfolio, or even if you are starting out new with the buy-to-let. I mean, it's all about keeping up to date with market trends. The trends are the cornerstone of any successful business, and being a landlord is obviously, or an investor, is no exception. Offering homes that are comfortable and modern lifestyle and things will continually attract you a high quality of tenant and market leading rents as well. Obviously, we discussed quite a lot yesterday, Jim, about rents, which are obviously on the increase. And we talked about obviously potential rental caps and things, which we might touch on today again.
Absolutely.
But some of next year's trends begin with obviously city centres spreading out further into spreading further out, while others reflect on evolving like home life, flexible and social and economical are buzzwords for next year. I think for 2022, also climate consciousness, energy bills and outside spaces are among the biggest concerns of tenants, while new business models are creating more profitable returns for landlords. So I think let's take a look at where the lettings market is going so we can help people plan their buy-to-let strategy for 2022.
I think as well, it's for the people actually viewing just now, it's important to realise that, you know, just because we're a Fife-based letting agency, this advice and information applies to worldwide, you know, effectively, because it's timeless classics, belts and braces information, which are the key foundations of your buy-to-let business. It will allow you to accelerate your progress next year in 2022 and beyond as a result of that. Could you imagine if this just... Because I used to get the reputation of the guy who would turn up to an opening an envelope if it would further his business, and literally I'm still like that just now. And the reason for that is because one key bit of information you could pick out of that seminar or whatever you went to in order to find out new information. One just key information and key sentence that you could get and advice could actually accelerate your performance fourfold. You know, I've done it before. I turned up and it said, "Oh, put an advert in the paper, houses and flats for cash." Does that sound familiar? And today on social media, but I actually did this 25, 30 years ago. And actually folks started phoning me up, and it only went to a free seminar, and I heard that one wee phrase, houses and flats for cash, put it in the paper, and I picked up a huge amount of properties, often below market value. And the reason for that is because I went round prepared to pay the right market value for it, and they actually talked it down themselves. I couldn't believe it. And I just sat there and watched that happen. And people said that would happen, but it's that information and advice of just, it's the turning up to an envelope, open an envelope, it'll further your business. And the investor network forums and the network and meetings and all the rest of it I've been to as well before has actually been a great networking opportunity to touch base with people far more successful than me in order to get that information and advice about what they would do in certain situations about certain things. So it is your network, and it's an old cliche. Your network will determine your net worth. That's really what it comes down to. And I've got a big network. So
I think if you're learning if you're trying to learn anything, I think it's important to continually draw from others and people that know better than you or have done it longer than you. And I think that's a good tip that you say, Jim. And I think over the years, training as a letting agent and things as well, you go to so many training seminars and things as well, and there's quite a lot of information to take in, and sometimes you think, God, I'm never going to remember all that. But I think as long as you pick up one or two key things and implement them as you go, is definitely quite a good strategy. And
you have to be very wary though. When you do go to these things, clearly there's obviously an agenda to sign up to a course. So when I used to go to them, it was like, oh, get you on the course for £2,000, £3,000, £4,000, and it's like, well, is this actually going to give me any value for money? And where are you right now in relation to where I want to be? And often I would look at the person and they were just one step ahead of me. So the reality is they actually they could only help me get to that next step. And I used to think, well, is it really worth £2,000 or £3,000 to do that?
Yeah,
probably not. And then I would just go and I'd just go learn from other people. So I picked up a lot of free information in the beginning, but a lot of it was self-taught and self-invented because there was no buy-to-let at that time. It never existed. There was no training systems at that time either. So I just actually developed my own training system for myself, which is what we're going to be doing next year. We're going to be teaching people. Only the people, and this is clear, only the people that are customers and investors with us, we will be teaching them how to build wealth over the short term, over the medium term, over the long term. And I mean wealth. It's about wealth creation, not just generating money every single month. It's about creating wealth over the short, medium, and long term. And that could be any avenue you want to. I mean, I know we're a wee bit off the track, but I'm sure people would like to know about developing wealth.
Yeah, of course. I'll just touch on one thing you said, and I think it's important that people are sometimes overly keen to learn and sometimes maybe pick up maybe the wrong information or maybe something that's not relevant to what they're doing. And can get led down the wrong path. Not so necessarily the wrong path, maybe not the right path for them. So when you're taking advice and things for people, make sure it's from the right people and it's relevant to what your kind of end goal is and where you want to be.
Absolutely. And on that note, good morning, James. One of our investors that actually has business with us and takes advice from us as well.
Yeah. And Karen, yourself, obviously, you've been through quite a lot of training and things recently, so I think a lot of that will be obviously relevant to you as well, and you'll understand what kind of where we're coming from with obviously picking up and learning on different skills. So
there's
anyway,
room for development and everything, but I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said obviously not everything is going to work for everyone, and you'll be taking in so much different information. So I think if you find certain things to focus on that work for you and develop on them, and then you can pick up more things as you go once you've set your fundamental things.
It's easy to get sidetracked, and I talked about it the other day in a vlog, and the fact that the shiny penny. You could easily, my business is core buy-to-let residential. It makes money every single time. Basically, while I've sat here and talked to you, I've made money, and I've actually not done anything for it. It's actually just generated because I did that years and years ago and set the foundations to do that. It is effectively writing a book, and you get the royalties for the rest of your life while people actually buy this book and read this book, and then you build a network as a result, and then more people are attracted to you because of that. That's exactly what I teach, and it's exactly what I do as a result of that, and it's exactly what I've got where I've got. What I don't do, get involved in student lets. I don't get involved in commercial property. I don't get involved in HMOs. It's like, because I know my core business is residential, and a lot of people jump from place to place, and they think about this, we've got to have multiple income streams in the beginning, and it's like, no, it's no. It's you get your income stream right first in your first thing that you're doing, you get that working properly, then you can move on to multiple income streams. But you get a lot of people jumping from place to place, and it's the old thing about a rolling stone gathers no moss. There's no traction there because you're jumping all over the place in that thing. But let's get back to the what we're talking about now. This is about the Landlord's Guide to Future Demand for Buy-to-Lets. This is the best advice on what you should be doing, how you should be doing it for the certain buy-to-lets. And I'll chip in now and again, and hopefully just keep my mouth shut.
Just take over, Jim. It's fine. So obviously lettings trends and back to the guide, and I think looking at lettings trends over the last year or so, I think one of the most relevant ones is maybe like gardens and outside spaces for rental properties. I think that the garden took on such a different role throughout lockdown and things, and so many new roles, with obviously pubs and cafes and shops and things all being locked down. We started to create our own, and people started to search for properties that had a lot more accommodating outside space, which would facilitate maybe a lot more outside living, having their own pub outside. You see all these garden bars popping up in everybody's garden throughout lockdown, and I think everybody's kind of become accustomed to spending a lot more time at home and in the garden, obviously in the better weather. And the focus for everyone for homes with some sort of outside space really became quite prominent, and there doesn't seem to be much signs of that changing. And there's obviously Rightmove studies have found that gardens top the list of tenants must-haves, with 49% saying they value outside space above all else. So if you're looking to begin to expand your portfolio, don't underestimate the draw of a garden, or even just a space like a balcony or some form of outside space where people could sit and enjoy outdoors. I think especially people maybe throughout lockdown who were in apartment blocks and things probably found it very difficult without having even just somewhere to sit outside and enjoy the fresh air. So I assume you'll agree with that, because we've seen it so much throughout the lockdown and on the back of lockdown through searches and things.
How much money has been spent in lockdown on things like that. We talk about the economy and keeping small businesses going and all the rest of it, but the reality is it is a booming economy. Some people actually saw the opportunity in lockdown even to actually have a business around the fact that we'll build your home office, you'll build your home garden, and we'll help you do that. And that was another way to adapt and change to the situation.
I blame the garden pub for the shortage of timber. Definitely.
Some people have almost built log cabins out their back garden. Yeah. And it amazes me completely how they've managed to do that, because it's like, well, maybe I'm just tight. I would rather spend it on investing. I would rather invest it in something rather than actually spend it on that. But then it's what you want, and it's just, I suppose, if it gives you that pleasure and the fact that you've got. But for me, I've learned my lesson to that degree, and the fact that I'll probably build it, and I know myself very, very well. I'll probably build it. I'll have a couple of weeks in it, and then it'll sit there empty for the rest of my life.
Do you know, Jim? I had the exact same kind of take on it. I did think about one, and I thought, God, I'll sit in it a few times, and I'll never use it. Yeah. But luckily, my friends who are neighbours built one, so I spend a lot of time in there.
Well, listen, there's nothing wrong, and that's a classic strategy for buy-to-let as well. If somebody else is doing it, then and you can take a line of what they're doing, then just do it. It's like, why would you pay for it if you can get it for free? Well, hey,
yeah, because I mean, we don't do pubs and things anywhere, so
let's hope your friend isn't watching.
They probably will be. But that's fine. But yeah, I mean, like we say about the obviously 49% of the Rightmove searches, that was top of the list, obviously garden spaces. And I think tenants expect to buy their own outdoor furniture, but consider qualities of outside space to give them year-round enjoyment. So obviously you need to think about things being attractive and easy to care for. Areas maybe decking or patio and some simple planting. And exterior lighting, outdoor heating, an infrared heater is an inexpensive touch of luxury. I mean, I don't know whether people would want to do that or not, because obviously then you are responsible for that heater. But I mean, if you've got that kind of set up, then as a good addition to have.
You know, this is what I didn't understand, and I'm laughing with you, not at you, when I'm talking to people about this.
I believe you.
It's like, no, but think about it. It's like we're going about climate change, and we're burning down the forests and fossil fuels, but we all have log burners and chimneys out our garden.
I know.
And it's like everybody's in the background, even some of the ministers on their programmes when they're doing broadcasts with a log burner in the back, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, I thought climate change was an issue here. It's like they've got a log burner firing away in the back.
But yeah, these kind of spaces, I think it's good to think about the outdoor space and even privacy and things as well. People want to sit and have a wee bit of privacy, so if you could create that maybe private space around a patio or a terraced area or things will really be beneficial when you're trying to attract the right tenant.
It is. It's amazing. It's amazing how the garden and outdoor space, and you'll probably say this as well, Karen, how it's neglected. And often in buy-to-let, it's almost like to the point where it's the last thing even to be considered, if even considered at all. Is that right, Karen?
Yeah, I think just now it's obviously turned around a wee bit just because people are spending more time outside. So we have seen a change in people looking after their garden space more because it is more of an important factor just now for it. So obviously even just this week, obviously we speak about COVID and people needing that outside space. But even this week I was out doing a viewing and it was somebody who was wanting to move literally just because they didn't have garden space.
Yeah.
So they were coming to see one of ours that did have a nice garden. So it's still such a factor for it as well. People wanting that space outdoors, and it makes such a difference. It's like an extension of your house basically, and like you say, Richard, you can have all these like things out in your garden to give you that additional living space out in your garden. So obviously most of the UK will go for a pub in theirs, but I mean you can have it as an office space outside and utilize it for what you need.
So think about it for yourself, and this is how I look at it. You know, when I do a buy-to-let property, I think to myself, is it something I would live in myself? If the answer to that is yes, then I've done it right. If the answer to that is no, then there's something I need to improve on. So the classic example is, could you imagine the same house, but one it's got a manicured garden, it's got the trellis, and it's got the pergola, and it's got maybe the patio area to you can seat with a bench at the back, ideally positioned for the sun, and it's maybe got a shed as well. And I know these things are a wee bit extra cost, but you're going to attract a better quality tenant. You're possibly going to get a wee bit more rent every single month. And think about it like this: so if you've got to spend maybe a couple of £1,000 or £1,000, let's say £1,000 extra to do that to your garden to get it properly done, or maybe £2,000 extra, but you think about the extra rent you would get, and somebody ended up paying 50 quid. So basically, you're paying 50 quid a month extra. That's £600 a year. If you divide 600 by 2,000, that's a good return when you think about the logic of that. Plus the fact you've attracted a better tenant, because it's 600 divided by 2,000. That's a 30% return. Yeah. So you get a 30% return on your investment just by getting that extra in terms of investment in your garden. So that's why I say to yourself, when you look at incremental improvements about what you're doing as a landlord, look at what you're going to do, how much it's going to cost. Will it attract a better quality tenant? And the key as well is, will they actually be prepared to just pay that wee bit extra rent? And what would that extra rent be every month? Multiply that by 12, divide it by the cost you're going to invest in doing that improvement, and it'll give you the incremental return on your investment. And so if you're getting a 15% net return, for example, then that boosts it up immediately, because that's money. It goes effectively straight to the bottom line and extra. That's how I look at it. I look at it like that all the time. If you've got a big room as well, here's a classic example. If you've got a big bedroom and it's got maybe 2 big massive windows in it, you could actually subdivide it and actually have 2 bedrooms, subject to permission and building control and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But you could actually have 2 bedrooms, and 2 bedrooms might actually get you a wee additional improvement, and the cost to divide it might actually be a couple of £1,000. Again, we're coming back to saying this return on investment in terms of what you're doing. So it's a good thing when you look at garden and outside space. It is often neglected, as I said, in the last resort. And some people don't actually consider it at all. Is actually to think about, how will this improve it? Curb appeal is everything, isn't it, Richard? Yeah,
definitely. I'm just going to take a wee second to jump through a few comments. James has just chipped in there. I was 3.5k putting in a proper garden in one of our Glen Office properties after 5-month wait. I remember that one, James. I know what one you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I've got Jeanette joining us this morning. Jeanette's just touched on the outdoor heaters. Not a good idea for landlords to be responsible for this. think of the dangers. I think it is responsible to think about the heaters. I was a wee bit wary about that one.
You can use them, or what you can do is, you can encourage your tenant to do that. You can give your tenant even a contribution towards it.
Yeah. I know. That's quite a good idea, Jim. I mean, we do that quite a lot, and
I often do it as well. It's like the one thing I do. It's like, okay, we'll never be able to do that because you've got a perfectly adequate thing already. But we can give you a contribution if you want to upgrade it for your own personal reasons. So because it adds value to your property. It keeps the tenant happy as well. And again, I go back to the investment return. I hate to say it like that, but this is all about numbers and all about how it equates to and how it comes out at the end of the day in order to get the best return for your investment.
Yeah, definitely. But I think if there is additional like luxury items and things that aren't a necessary like commodity in the property, but it would make the tenant's life a lot easier, then sometimes it is quite a good idea to maybe think, right, well, we'll split it down the middle and we'll both contribute to it. And then in the long run, like you say, it does add value and things as well.
It's a bit bizarre. I keep thinking it's a bit bizarre talking about the tenant, because I never refer to anybody as tenants, really. I always think about their names. It's like I always remember everybody by names when I talk about properties.
Well, we would, obviously, with everybody that we manage, but data protection, Jim, I can't name people.
but it's been like that for me since I started. I've never really, because I always think tenants are a pretty clinical thing. And I know what it means, but to me it doesn't. It is pretty clinical, and I actually like to know my tenants. I like to know who they are. I like to help them, because they've come to live with me, and I feel a sense of responsibility.
Yeah, definitely, and I think, Kieran, you'll agree on day-to-day management of properties that we look after. We know every tenant and every property by their first name.
We do. When we get a new start and it's a new system for them to go through, it's like, give it a few months. By that one point, you'll know who lives in what property, who has what landlord, who has what pets, kids, everything. You do. You just pick up everything.
And I think if you're a landlord, an investor, or an agent, and you don't know your tenants and things by first name or any type of information about them, then maybe you should have a look at that, because you should have that kind of rapport and relationship to be able to
This is a big thing just now. Can I talk about working from home? Like the recent BBC study actually showed 79% of business leaders and 70% of public thought that working from home would continue in some sort of form. Mm-hmm. We're all working from home just now, aren't we? Basically.
Yeah. I know.
So I think that'll still continue the way things are going, and you noticed the announcement today as well. So I think that'll go as well. The pandemic has shown that most people don't necessarily need to fit their lives around their work anymore, really. Many are seizing the opportunity for change. Some are actually going self-employed. Others are actually flexible working to mix the days at the office with days at home as well. That's a big key point. Because I often, once in a blue moon, I actually just pop into the offices now, but mainly I'm out in the field doing what I need to do, and I work from a home office because it's more flexible and it works perfectly well. And I think as we evolve as a company, we'll begin to do that as we get bigger. Where more people will actually be able to work from home as a result of that. But this actually for buy to let is a golden opportunity. So what's the next steps from working from home then, Richard?
Yeah, I think it means that obviously, people's single bedrooms have found a new life and a new and an audience. Historically, landlords looked for 2-bedroom properties to attract sharers, but one double bedroom and one single bedroom is the perfect solution for couples and working professionals who now need to work from home. I'm sitting in my spare room right now. So I think that is...
I'm sitting in my new studio.
I'm sitting in my new studio.
Yeah, so am I. Sorry, I forgot about that. But yeah, that's where I am just now, and it's and that's how a lot of people will be working now. Of course, some people simply need a place to sit with a laptop, and that isn't the sofa or in bed. You need to obviously be sitting at a desk. And aside from dining tables and breakfast bars doubling up on duties, we see small desks appearing in people's bay windows and alcoves, and I think even people are changing. Like if you've got a big enough cupboard to walk in, you see these cupboards.
Exactly. I'll be honest, Richard, and I'll tell a story, and possibly people have heard this before, but I actually started all my studying under the stairs in Durward Street with my first property. I actually just took the understairs cupboard, aligned it with channel lining. Literally, it was a cupboard like Harry Potter. And then I put shelves all the way around, and I put my desk in, and I managed to get my chair in and close the door. And that's effectively where I studied for my accountancy. And I didn't come out of there. And then the reason I went into there was because I had to come out the single bedroom, because Tony was born, and Tony had the single bedroom for our nursery. So it was all these evolutions about how you would do things and how you would develop it. I'm in this room now because when we started lockdown, I was at the kitchen table, and it was coming to 5 o'clock, and it was like, are we not getting our tea? And I'm like, I'm not finished yet. So I got, it was more frustration, born out of frustration that, we need another room. And I think that's how everybody is. So I don't see any reason why tenants wouldn't need that either.
I think it's having the property that has the adaptability as well. I was speaking with a landlord this week, and she's like, this is what this room could be used for, this is what this could be for. And I'm like, it's great to have the options with it. And then tenants are obviously able to utilize the space as what suits them, whether it's a home office, whether it's a bedroom, and you have that
classic
space
example about putting a triangle shelf in a corner of your bedroom is just sticking against the wall with a couple of wall brackets to have somewhere to actually sit your laptop and actually broadcast from. That's a classic way of doing it as well, with just a chair underneath. So you've just got a wee triangular bit board, fix it to the walls with the brackets, and job's done. A wee lighting system, drill a hole for your cables to go through, and you're in business.
Yeah, and if you've got a property that you're kind of aiming for that working professional market, and you think, well, this area would be good for them to study in, then demonstrate that to them. Maybe dress it that way, or make a point of you or your agent advertising it that way, or showing it to them and explaining that that's potentially what it can be. Because not everybody maybe could see and envisage that. So that's important.
There's a raft of information and a wealth of information that you've seen all before, Richard, anyway. And if you're unsure about your home working space would fit into your buy-to-let property, definitely somebody like you or yourself, Richard, or Karen can actually help in this situation for anybody wanting advice and support on that, to show the potential tenants how well your property works for their lifestyle. So this is all about advisory and advice at this point in time. Let's talk about energy efficiency. What's your thoughts on energy efficiency, Richard?
I think two of the biggest news stories over the last, obviously, year has been, obviously, climate change and energy bills. Yeah. And it's a double whammy there, because everyone's having to look harder at their energy consumption for both the cost of the planet and, obviously, their own balances as well. Yeah. And it has become a big thing. With tenants and homeowners alike as well, obviously. And tenants are asking more and more about the running costs of when we are on viewings. Obviously, Karen, you'll get this quite a lot, of like, obviously, how much is it to run the property in terms of the utility bills, and what makes the energy efficiency of your buy-to-let an important factor. And the Adaptability and government legislation is also set to tighten even further. Obviously, EPC restrictions and things are due to come in. I think we're looking at EPC rating C by 2025 for everything.
That's crazy. And now let's just qualify that and stop there and actually talk about that, because there is an exemption, and the exemption is if you can demonstrate it's prohibitive for your property to upgrade it to a C, and it's going to cost you like probably the value of the property, then it's not going to be practical to do that, and you'll still be able to continue to let it under the exemptions. So there is an exemption in there, so everybody just don't panic. Well, if you are panicking, I'm buying, by the way. So I'm just putting that out there. If you're panicking as a landlord, I'm buying. Because you know what happens. It's like, as people panic, Warren Buffett says, start buying.
I think quite a lot of the...
I think that's the main thing as well, is don't worry about it too much, but it is coming in.
Yeah, but I think a lot of the typical buy-to-let properties in Fife, the ex-local authority builds and things, are quite easy to obviously upgrade and get to that level. Not already nearly there anyway.
It's traditional period and stone-built properties are the problem, and non-standard construction. Non-standard construction as well, like the oh God, I can't remember what they call it. No fines is probably the most obvious one. No fines, non-standard construction. They're actually quite difficult to cavity wall insulate. There is actually some properties that actually have got a cavity wall. Classic example is Main Street in Methil Hill. They're actually too wide, the cavity wall, so they actually can't do cavity wall insulation. Work that one out.
Yeah,
I never realised that if your walls, your cavity is too wide, it can't do it.
I didn't realise that either, actually. So
No, it's I only realised that because just experience over time and understanding that and coming across it in certain situations. But one of our landlords, one of our bigger landlords, actually had properties in that area and still do. And we went to they went to upgrade for the cavity wall insulation, and the guys came back and says we can't do it because the cavity is too wide. Whether that's a cost thing or whether that's I don't know. I don't know why that is, but maybe somebody else could tell us out there as well. What other inexpensive improvements can you do?
Yeah, I mean, well, you've got the low-cost flow restrictions on taps and toilets to cut water consumption, room and radiator thermostats to optimise heating use. I mean, we see this quite a lot. Everybody's got all the radiators up full and don't regulate room temperatures and things. That wastes a lot of energy.
Oh, that's my house. I have to go around and turn them all down.
I think you used to do that in the offices, Jim, as well.
Right, okay. Can I just get my wee bit off my chest here?
Yeah,
right, and I'm going to do it anyway, so you're just going to have to agree.
Yeah.
The thermostats on radiators are to control the temperature in the room. They're not to control the temperature of the radiator. Okay, so it means if you turn it to 3, for example, that's usually the midpoint. That means your room will heat up to 20 degrees because that's often where it is, which is room temperature. It will then shut the radiator off and the room won't get any warmer. Then when the temperature of the room starts to drop, the radiator comes back on when it drops below 20 and it heats it up again in order to heat the room again. That's what a radiator thermostat is for. It's not the heat of the radiator. The heat of the heat coming from the radiator is determined by the hot water on the boiler. And that's it in a nutshell. 2 different systems appropriate for each use. Whereas everybody goes, I'm cold, let's turn the radiator up. It's like, but the radiator's on already. It's not getting any hotter.
Okay. And insulation on hot water tanks, that's a good one as well. There was one recently that we had and had quite a low EPC rating, and that was one of the main factors that was drawing it down because the insulation around the water tank was done and it only needed redone. Draft excluders, of course, letterboxes, doors, to reduce the heat loss. There's nothing worse than heating up a room or a house and then it just all flying out the bottom of the door or out the letterbox. I mean, I actually fitted new doors in my house and I didn't put a letterbox in. I didn't put a letterbox in at all. I just put one on the wall outside because I thought I'm just going to lose heat out of it.
Windows as well. The amount of tenants that we have phoning up saying we've got a drafty window or a drafty door. I'm sitting here just now and I can feel a draft. So as soon as we finish this, I'm hunting to find out where that draft is coming from.
But then the flip side of that, Karen, as you see it all the time, we close off all these drafts, we insulate all the houses, and guess what happens? The dreaded C word, condensation.
Yeah.
And then damp, what people call it, and it's like, no, damp is a different thing. Condensation. You'll know your property isn't a damp if it's just got black spot on the walls. That's caused by damp. That's caused by condensation, condensating at the back of cupboards and drawer units and beds and stuff like that. And it's got nowhere to dissipate to because you've closed off every single draft in your house. So it doesn't go anywhere. It just circulates and hits the wall again because it's the coldest part in your room. So the key here is ventilation, isn't it?
It is, and keeping on top of it as well. Obviously, I am newly in this house, and the condensation I get on the windows in the morning, but every morning I go along and I clean it down, and I don't have any other issues apart from that because I keep on top of it. Yeah,
because 30% during the night when you're actually sleeping, about 30% of the condensation actually comes from your breathing.
It's actually you that told me that, and it's something that every morning I wake up and I look at my windows and I can hear you saying that to me.
See that, Jim? You have that influence on everyone.
Leave a lasting mark. There's the boy who tells me about condensation all the time.
Right, and also, obviously, if you have appliances and things that are provided as part of the let, there's always eco settings on them, whether it's the washing machine, the dishwasher and things, and they could save a lot as well. I used to be guilty of that as well with their dishwasher and things and just put it up high. But there's actual eco settings and they do save quite a lot of energy. Older homes tend to be less energy efficient, so if you have drafty single glazing, windows or zero insulation, talk to your managing agent about a timetable for bringing them up to date and keeping your property in demand. So yeah, I think it's very important. I think if you are a tenant and you find things like this in the property that are becoming a problem, speak to your landlord or your agent and things, because they will, of course, want to address that and make the property more energy efficient, because it benefits everybody. So definitely. And then I think
as you said, Richard, it will become a more and more prominent thing with tenants because running costs are a big, huge issue, especially if you find rents will start to creep up and possibly these costs will start to keep up. The first thing everybody's going to go for is a more energy efficient property because it's an easy option to fix. To get a more energy efficient and actually bring the price down of what you're spending every single month. Because we know ourselves, we look at our budget and we budget ourselves every single month. How many people have too much month at the end of the money? And it is an ongoing issue, isn't it? And the fact that it's priorities, and if you can look at it this way, right? If I could save you £10, £20 a month on your energy bills or your energy savings, right? That's £240 a year. Now, £10 a month, £20 a month, you'd think, it's no bother. But if you then think if I took £240 out of your pocket, you would go, wait a minute. You would be up in arms, wouldn't you? Yeah. And yet, just for these subtle changes, you could actually save yourself £20 a month. Martin Lewis talks about it all the time.
Yeah, Jim, you and I were speaking about in a separate meeting yesterday about doing small changes and the big effect that they have. And it's the exact same implemented here with energy efficiency and cost saving on your bills. So yeah, all those small changes definitely benefit.
So what about
let's move on. Sorry.
What about co-living then? Let's talk about that.
I was just going to say, let's move on and speak about co-living. Now, if you haven't heard about co-living, think of it as a deluxe version of HMOs and multi-lets. It's become big in purpose-built apartment buildings for corporate landlords, but there is nothing to stop private landlords from increasing their income by offering something similar in houses. Tenants already share, but co-living gives a more coordinated experience and their outgoings, home life, and how a property is run. So think weekly cleaning, bills included, a focus on design-led specification, smart TVs and desks in each bedroom, comfortable and sociable living spaces with high-quality furniture and additional shared bedrooms and en-suites.
This is primarily really meant for cohabiting professionals in cities, isn't it?
I was just going to say, what springs to mind when we speak about that to me is working professionals who are obviously flat sharing and things as well.
And it again comes back to the budgeting thing as well, as if they know they've got one set price and that's it, and relatively all their other bills are taken care of in that set price, people are actually sometimes happy just to do that because they have certainty.
Yeah, I mean, we don't operate with HMOs, but we do obviously let to students in and around obviously St Andrews area and things. Yeah. And we do have students that share, but obviously there could only be a certain number of them. You obviously fall into the HMO side of things. But yeah, that's the working professional thing.
But it doesn't take much when you think about it to put smart TVs and desks in each bedroom. I mean, I've just given you an easy option there to just put a triangle table right against you, right in the corner. Put a couple of brackets on it, drill a couple of holes, so it actually looks a proper desk for somebody to sit at. And yet that's probably a corner you'll never actually utilise in that bedroom at all.
Yeah, and I think that's what it comes back to saying if that's your target audience and you have that idea in your head, then demonstrate that as such and make sure that it's clear when you're obviously presenting the property or doing viewings. Would you agree with that, Karen?
Yeah, I think obviously utilising and when you're doing viewings, pointing out the positive points of a property, and obviously we have a pre-qualifying stage where we know what we at least have an insight into people's circumstances. So doing viewings, it's, are you working from home? And people are usually quite open about telling you these kind of things. So if you do have a viewer that is going to be working from home, it is pointing out the spaces that they could use and utilise to be doing that. Because I mean, nobody wants to be working under the stairs.
Yeah, but I think busy professionals will pay extra for a property which is a stylish place to live and work and is also well managed as well. I think that's important, that if you're trying to command a certain level of rent, then you need to obviously have these kind of things, these measures in place and demonstrate that as such.
Mm-hmm. And it's the fact as well, like people are like-minded. If you've got a number of people actually working in the same company and in the corporate world, it's actually good for them to be together sometimes because they know each other already. They're comfortable with each other in the way they work. You just have to make sure you give them a degree of distance to actually separate from each other now and again, and they're not in a property which basically is all designed so they're on top of each other all the time. Excuse that pun. maybe that wasn't the right thing to say.
Yeah, maybe not. But yeah, I think, and also I think from an affordability point of view, I mean, depending where the property is and what the rent level is at, if people are working together or studying together and things, then it might make good sense to them to split the rent and still have a space which is in the area that they want and
Classic
have
old school as students, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think especially in areas like, and obviously it keeps coming to mind, obviously St Andrews, and the cost of renting in St Andrews is very high, and obviously tenants, students, should I say, are more than happy to share living spaces and split rents.
Yeah, and all fairness, you know, personally, if I was a St Andrews University student, I would actually be living over in Dundee, more than likely, because the rent's probably half the price, and it's only a wee commute in every day. Jump on my bike and cycle in. It's a fair distance, but hey ho, or even get the bus or something.
From Cooper as well. Cooper's a good
Cooper's
place
quite a good area.
Yeah, Cooper's a really good area for students as well, because we've got a few, staying with.
Because obviously you've got the college and it's still distance to be able to commute to St Andrews as well. So we do get quite a few students in the Cooper area that are looking.
Plus the fact Cooper's actually quite good from the point of view that you've got the central railway station. So for people that are actually not of this area, it's easy for them then just to commute right out, you know, pop out their flat and they'll just run down to the train station. They're off to Edinburgh, on to Glasgow, up to Dundee, over to up to Aberdeen. So they've got that network rail system in place already for them right on their doorstep. Whereas St Andrews is a bit more remote. You've got to go 3 miles out to Lookers. Yeah, and that's just a round branch. That's not an actual through. I don't think that actually just goes round.
No, it's not the main line.
Yeah, it goes round in what they call the circle. So it is really good to actually have that sort of flexibility in terms of what it is. But so it depends who wants what and where. So build to rent, Richard.
I think build to rent, obviously, it's not going to be for everybody. But I think if you're looking to really scale up your buy-to-let business, you could consider build to let. As tax liabilities for lettings have increased, landlords with a long-term view to explore more profitable models, the cost of building a property is less than the full market value, and stamp duty is only payable on the price of the land rather than each home, and all of that can quickly deliver savings of many tens of thousands of pounds. So what's your view on build to rent, Jim? I mean, obviously, maybe in Fife it's not.
It works perfectly well, because I had a recent development that was 34 properties, and they were all near enough completion, and it actually made sense for me to look at buying the whole lot and actually renting them. But the numbers still worked, which actually leads me to believe then is like, how does the local authority not see that? Because the local authority are convinced that they shouldn't have built to rent. Now they're actually away buying from the private sector and buying houses like we do as private landlords to sustain their portfolio. They looked at buying 50 this year, and they'll probably do another 50 next year. But I'm thinking, why do you think this works? Is it because there's builders out there taking advantage of the local authority? Do they have to do it at different standards? I don't know. But build to rent's a really good option. But I think you need to be a professional in the building industry in order to do that. Because it is a big outlay for someone just to jump in and start to build from scratch, and combat all these issues that could come up. Whereas if you go straight to a builder that's done it all before, you basically you're not reinventing the wheel, because they understand how to do it. So sometimes joint venturing with an existing builder could be a good option for a buy-to-let landlord, or let's not call them buy-to-let landlords. Let's call them investors, because they're ultimately investors, because they see the bigger picture now and they understand the dynamics of the wealth creation over a long period of time, just by actually getting everything in place as quick as possible and a huge foundation built, so it compounds over a period of time and actually generates wealth every single month and income every single month as a result, to reinvest back in the business if they want.
Yeah, it could be quite a profitable and lucrative model to invest in. But I think joint ventures is probably the way to go if you were looking at that. Like you say, Jim, like the example you just gave with those 35 properties that you were discussing. And I think that most new build homes are built around owner-occupiers who prefer their own private spaces, but tenants appreciate shared amenities like communal terraces and co-working areas and social events. So the idea is to create a place where tenants feel part of a permanent and dedicated rental community. So I think, like you say, if it was a scheme of houses, say 30, 35, then obviously it would be somewhere they would cherish and want to stay for the long term.
I think as well, that's where you get into when it's big, huge developments like that. You get into property management, but also the actual facilities management. So it's not just about just the individual properties; it's about the whole site itself.
It's about the community and the lifestyle.
You have to look after that. There's some landlords in America. People will know them. They're buying 250 units at one point at a time. They're buying 250. They're getting a whole load of investors to come in with them, and I understand that model completely. However, we don't have anywhere we could build like that on that scale. And then what they do is they've got communal swimming pools, they've got communal lounge areas or party rooms, they've got communal places for all these people to go. Communal balcony, probably one of the most prominent about here is the Hamilton Grand. I know it's $4 million for a 2-bedroom apartment.
I was just going to say it's a wee bit pricey, Jim. But
I know, but on a well. This is the key here, right? Let me explain to you. And somebody actually said it the other day. I can't remember what they were saying, but I said it's not the house you're paying for when you're buying it. It's the money comes from where it is, the land.
Yeah.
Because the house is the same price regardless of where it is to build. Give or take, ergonomics and all the rest of it, and working it out for logistics.
That's where it's positioned, yeah.
If it costs you 100,000 to build a house and leaving, it costs you 100,000. If it'll cost you 100,000 to build the same house in St Andrews, it'll cost you 100,000 to build it in Glasgow. But what makes the difference is the land.
Yeah,
the land actually has the value, so it's not anything to do with that. And that's where build to rent has to be done and has to be worked out properly in terms of the economic implications of it. But it is this community. So another example of that would be McCarthy Stone. So McCarthy Stone have been very successful at that for the elderly population, the over 55s and over 60s.
Yeah.
They actually get them to buy into their rental model, and they buy the property, but they actually charge them a management fee every single month as a result of that. So McCarthy Stone have actually built a very lucrative business in the beginning, and they won't make money for it.
Yeah, and Karen, you've just recently been in touch with some of the new build schemes and brought on a new one, which is part of this kind of new build scheme community thing, and got that on the market. And do they have kind of like on-site, like do they have a park and things like that make it that part of a individual community of its own?
Yeah, so you've got your play parks and everything for the kids to go and play at. So what is it? It's a whole nice it's your typical scheme. Like you have your nice new houses, you have the park for people to go and play in, nice area so you can still go out for a walk. So it's you're building it. I actually thought you were going to say something different, Jim, but you're also paying for this lifestyle of what these type of properties that you're going for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think obviously building to rent also gives you more control over maintenance and repairs. So I think obviously if you have been doing a joint venture and you have this built, then you have a lot more input into obviously things. And then when you own the building and all the apartments within, you can simply get on with the works without needing to do obviously other owners do like a joint repair with other owners and things. I mean, we've got some of yours, Jim, that are in buildings, your flats, that there's factors involved and other landlords and things. I didn't know what to say. Quick one.
No, it's fine. Milk Street and Kirkcaldy next to the Race Rovers football ground. I mean, they manage that every single month.
Yeah, I mean, if we do something in that building, we need to clear it with the other owners, and obviously there's a factor involved in things as well. Karen, you've obviously managed them for a few years, so you're familiar with that kind of setup. So that if you're in control of that and don't have to then be checking with other owners and things in the buildings, it makes things a lot easier to manage and to look after.
Yeah, I think even when you have like a leak in a flat, it can be a nightmare, because if it's a leak from upstairs and you don't manage upstairs and you don't know who is and who has upstairs, it can be a nightmare trying to get them to fix the leak. So even if it's a tenant that phones up at Mill Street and says, I've got a leak, it's like, right, what one are you? Right, we've got upstairs, we'll get that sorted. And it makes it so much easier if you've got that entirety of the block, because you know the tenant that's in there, you know when you can get access, you can send out your contractor to it and it can be fixed as quick as possible.
And the great thing is the ones in Mill Street, for example, they are actually a double bedroom and a single bedroom. So they would accommodate professionals, and it's exactly what we talked about using the single bedroom as probably a home office for people. So it's ideal for that, or maybe even a home gym, probably a classic example as well. So that's what I like about them. Interestingly enough, and this is a classic about how a lot of people go for new build for. So I bought these new build. I bought 4 of them in Mill Street, probably before the credit crunch actually. So that shows you how long I've got them. I've had them for over 15 years. But to be honest, they haven't really appreciated. I've never been. It's always put me off new build because they haven't really appreciated in value. But I tell you what I've done. I've earned £75,000 in rent out each one of them over the time, and that's effectively more than what I bought them for.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
effectively, and the key is here. I never really look at capital appreciation. I mean, obviously, my other portfolio appreciates very, very well. A lot of them actually do, and they've gone up, 3 and 4 times. But these ones haven't. But I'm not really particularly bothered because I've never actually looked at capital appreciation as the wealth creation. I've looked at the actual generation of the income on a monthly basis in order to reinvest it to buy more property, to build wealth over a longer period of time. So it's never been about capital appreciation for me because it is a byproduct of what we do as investors. The wealth creation, the cash flow every single month is probably the most important thing because that's what provides for a lifestyle if you want to retire. That's the key here. I'll come back to saying, and we've got a wee bit of time to say this, Richard, when I hit 38 years old, when I worked at ESA Macintosh, most people didn't realise what position I was in financially. And I was lucky enough to actually, labour under correct knowledge. Over the years, I'd built a portfolio to the point that I'd actually be able to replace my income as a financial controller, financial director. And I was able to walk away from that scot-free and actually be independent and have no one in control of what I do anymore, or my money or my lifestyle as a result. And that's what I always wanted to do out of being an investor and a buy-to-let investor. And that's why we teach that now to other people. Because if you want that level, then I can teach you how to do it because I've done it. Now we jokingly said the other day, that's 17 years I've been out of there now. So do you think in the 17 years I had a certain amount of money? I was a millionaire when I left Macintosh. Most people didn't realise that. But when you think about that now and think about how that's developed and how much you make over 17 years and where I was there, if I'd stopped and did nothing and just actually gone and worked in a supermarket, for example, because it's a no-brainer, it's an easy life for me. I actually went out to work as a window cleaner with my dad for a wee while. I enjoyed it. But if I wanted to do that and then do nothing else, then think about how that accumulated in wealth over the years and what that generated for income for me as I went on before with that. And that's where all the wealth creation is.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I would never have needed to do anything to that because you guys manage the whole lot. I don't get involved in it anymore, really. I sometimes do. But that's because I'm a control.
But no, for the most part, I know what you mean. Yeah, and that's really what you need to do. And I think if you're really serious about wanting to be an investor and have a portfolio, and you do need to take a step to the side and allow your managing agent to do it for you and advise you and just kind of take the lead. And if you've got a managing agent in place who obviously have done it for so many years and done all the right training and know what they're doing and do it day to day, they will more than likely know best, and you'd be better just leaving them to get on with it. And it saves you all the hassle of having to keep up to date with things and make sure you're in the know and remembering things or trying to remember things.
The classic example is the amount of people that are so successful in their day jobs, they make an absolute fortune, and then they brag the next day about how they've made £10 off eBay on 4 hours they spent on the night before. I think, okay, so you made £2.50 an hour. Big deal, you idiot. Yeah. It's like, that's crazy. I will call that out. You laugh when I say that. It's like, I'm not kidding.
No, I believe you. That's why I'm laughing.
That is completely broke thinking. Yeah. The reality is, if you're so successful at your job and you're making, 20, 30, 40 quid an hour, if that's the case, why on earth are you wanting to spend 4 hours to try and make £2.50 an hour for these 4 hours? Just go and work more overtime or put more effort in your job or put more effort into something else that makes more money. £2.50 an hour, making 10 quid for 4 hours of your time isn't worth it. You've only got 168 hours in the week. use them wisely and use them
Yeah.
smartly and efficiently.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So final thoughts on today's subject, obviously lettings trends and everything that we've covered today, Karen?
If you're looking for a new buy-to-let, try and get one with a garden. It makes such a difference.
Yeah, I think the garden thing is quite important now, as obviously was discussed, and I think everybody will be aware of that. Obviously, all going through the same situation with lockdown and needing outside space. So, I think to have that available for tenants who are looking definitely makes it appealing and a lot more easier to rent the property. And it commands a better rent as well if you've got a nice outdoor space that people can enjoy and utilise while they are in the property. Final thoughts, Jim?
For me personally, as a landlord or an investor, it's like I come back to saying, I can't emphasize it enough. If you don't love the house that you're renting and you wouldn't want to live it yourself, then you shouldn't be renting it. That's the reality. It's because you have to look at it like that. Now that came from years ago from Sarah Beanie. I remember watching her on Property Ladder, and she actually turned around to one of the people and they say, "Oh, I hate this house. I do this and I can't stand that. And I can't stand this." And she went, "No wonder you can't do anything about it. No wonder a tenant doesn't want to live in it because you hate it." And the penny dropped for the people watching, but also dropped for me. And I thought, I never thought about it like that, because there was a couple of properties that I was hard to let just now, and that's how I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about it like, I didn't like that property. I hate it. And it's like, I wish somebody would just take it. And it's like, well, I'm not surprised nobody takes it because you didn't like it either. So what do you need to do to make you like it? That's the most important thing. So as an investor and a landlord, walk into the property, see how it is for you. Even, Richard, you do this for me, don't you? You actually walk through and do a video for me and you talk about the whole property. I've actually never been in some of my properties now because I buy them, you go and see them and you walk around them and tell me what should be done where. And that's the perfect thing I need you to do. And that's why we work well as a team to do that, because you allow me to release my time so I can specialise in the things that I can make more money on than actually walking around and doing that. Because we're coming back to by the time I've walked around and worked it all out, I'm trying to save 20 quid.
Yeah, and it's so easy for me to go in and think, right, oh, this needs done, I wouldn't like that, so let's change it. And just get sorted, and that's it. And then
so it's a great relationship in the fact that I can put my input in as well as you've been putting your input when you first go around. So we can come to an agreement about what we need to do. You get all the costs together and you pull them all together. You then say, okay, do that, do this, do that, and do this, and do that. And anything exponentially, you come or quite a lot in terms of money, you'll come back to me and say, well, we're needing this done, and I then grill you over it clearly, and then I agree to it. But I still have to grill you over it to make sure that actually it is. But I think the great thing about me doing that with you is everybody else gets that type of service as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think what that brings me to, obviously, just to round up, is that I think on the topic of letting trends and how to keep things relevant and how to keep your portfolio and buy-to-let business functioning, is to have a good managing agent who will keep you on trend and keep you doing things that will keep your portfolio healthy, basically, and give you a long-lasting and a bit longevity in your portfolio, which is ultimately what you need for a successful buy-to-let business. Any questions about anything that we've discussed today, obviously, feel free to drop a comment in the comments box, or speak to Jim and I, or even Karen, of course, direct.
And if anybody wants to join the Investors Club, please feel free to contact or message us, and we'll let you join the Investors Club. It's not going to cost you anything to do it. The reality is you'll get information, you'll get advice, and you'll get stuff like this, and you'll be able to touch base with us in terms of how you can develop your buy-to-let portfolio, even if you're starting out for the first time. So don't be afraid. Just to reach out if that's the case. It's all, at the end of the day, if you don't do anything, you'll be exactly where you are right now next year, and the year after, and the year after, and the year after. I know people that started at the same time as me that still never bought a buy-to-let property. We're in two different places now. One of us doesn't need to work for the rest of their life and will still earn money. The other one has to work for the rest of their life and will not get away from that at all. So plug into the system if you can. That's what we're here for, the specialist advice.
Definitely. And the Investors Group is a private group. All our content and free information goes on there, so feel free to ask if you would like to join. Right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. So thanks very much for joining me this morning, Jim and Karen, and Everybody have a lovely day.
Fired up. I'm fired up. I'm going to buy more property. You've got me going. Right, see you later. Bye-bye for now.
Right, guys, see you later. Bye.